We are tackling a huge Disney question today. What are the top 10 rides of all time across every single Disney park? Are we biting off more than we can chew here, or will we be able to really narrow it down to just the 10 best rides in a sea of amazing Disney rides? Let's conquer this challenge together here on DFB Guide. Hey everybody, it's AJ for Disney Food Blog. So I am super stoked for today's video because I get to talk about not just the top 10 rides in Magic Kingdom or even the top 10 rides in Disney World, but the top 10 Disney rides everywhere. Disney's got 12 theme parks sprinkled around the globe, and throughout these 12 parks, you're going to find hundreds upon hundreds of rides. But my scriptwriter Bria and I and our whole DFB team have put our brains together and come up with what we believe is a solid top 10 rides list, filled with classic and newer Disney rides alike, and we're ready to defend our stances tooth and nail. But as always, if you don't see your personal favorite Disney ride on today's list and you want to defend its honor, add it to the comments so we can keep the conversation going. Now, number one on our list. It only feels right to start off a top 10 Disney rides list with a ride straight out of Tokyo Disney, because if I'm being really real with you right now, I probably could have built this whole top 10 list with just Tokyo Disney rides alone. The Oriental Land Company does not mess around when it comes to providing quality rides and attractions. That is for certain. And if you need further proof of that, just take a look at Enchanted Tale of Beauty and the Beast, which opened toward the second half of 2020 as part of a huge Tokyo Disneyland expansion that stretched across Fantasyland, Tomorrowland, and Toontown, and also opened other attractions like La Taverne de Gaston Quick Service, the Fantasyland Forest Theater, and the ever so popular Happy Ride with Baymax. Enchanted Tale of Beauty and the Beast is a dark ride located in Tokyo Disneyland that takes place inside Beast's castle. After winding your way around the castle corridors, you'll be led to the main foyer for a stunning pre-show that recaps the major struggles that Beast is having at the moment, what with getting everyone cursed and turning into furniture, and then having to find love before the last rose petal falls and, well, he wants to break the spell, right? You know, typical Disney stuff. Now, something I get asked all the time about rides in foreign parks is the ride in English or is it in the local language? Well, this pre-show is all in Japanese, but if you're already familiar with the Beauty and the Beast story, you'll get the gist of it, and it's still awesome. For the actual ride, you're going to board a giant teacup, which will transport you into the story of Belle and Beast, and from there, prepare to be dazzled. The animatronics are so fluid, so lifelike. The scale of the sets in this particular ride is just outstanding. And of course, it's all dark everywhere, so you can't really see where the room ends, which just makes it even more immersive. Kind of like that section on Pirates of the Caribbean where you're going, you're next to the pirate ship and you're going into the little town, and because you can't really see the ceiling or the walls, it does kind of feel like you're out there on the ocean. So it's that kind of vibe here, but the castle just seems so massive. And then of course you have that absolutely incredible magical transformation at the very end. This is Disney Imagineering at its finest. Now, I think this ride really sets the bar for what I want from all Disney dark rides from here on out. There's never a moment of empty space. Everything still looks as new as the day it first opened, and the storytelling beats are paced out incredibly well so that the ride's conclusion still strikes you with chills, even if you've heard this tale as old as time countless times before. Sivako! I know, there can be pushback when it comes to an attraction that's mainly screen-based. Where are the props, the animatronics, the incredible immersion outside the virtual world? But Flight of Passage in Disney's Animal Kingdom has illustrated the right way to pull off a screen-based attraction while still highlighting amazing Imagineering all journey long, still making sure that you have an actual story that's being told to you, a physical story as well. And that's where I think that Flight of Passage in Disney's Animal Kingdom does a really, really good job with a super immersive queue and super immersive pre-shows, because even though the attraction itself is fully screen-based, the experiences that you're having leading up to that and the physical feelings that you're having while you're actually on that, motorcycle? I guess you're riding a Banshee. It's a Banshee. But it's just absolutely still a physical experience, a 4D experience while you are watching the screen. Flight of Passage was built as the main attraction for the Pandora World of Avatar expansion in Disney World from 2017. So think of this as kind of a cross between Soarin' Around the World and Tron Light Cycle Run. You sit on the back of that Banshee in a similar way that you straddle the light cycle on Tron, but you'll be flying over expansive landscapes much like you do on Soarin'. However, instead of flying over places that you can visit in real life, Flight of Passage takes you into the mythical realm of Pandora, where you're going to come face to face with fantasy creatures, bioluminescent caves, lots of good smells, splashes of water, and tons of banshees, both good and not so good. So the ride is thrilling without it being too intense, making it a great option for even newer riders who are just tall enough to crawl into their own avatar skin and barrel roll a Banshee. But the main ride isn't all you have to look forward to with this one. Each room inside the queue takes you through the story of Pandora's discovery and conservation. You'll explore carved hallways decorated with intricate Na'vi paintings and art pieces, Pandora's famous bioluminescence plant life, and that full-on lab where the scientists of the Pandora Conservation Initiative conduct their research. There's also a full-on avatar animatronic within the laboratory as well, which is the highlight of the queue. Last I knew, the cast members called him Hank in the Tank. Beyond the queue, you'll experience 2 back-to-back pre-shows, which are a big part of the ride storytelling too, since this is where you're going to get matched with your avatar, possibly undergo disinfectant to get rid of any hidden parasites, and get all hyped up to, fly. Flight of Passage could have been just another flying theater type ride, but it is so much more than that. It's a screen ride that combines practical sets and new technology to keep you immersed inside the experience through the queue and the pre-show and the main attraction. I mean, your Banshee is actually breathing while you are riding it. You can feel it. It's wild. Plus, there's a mid-queue restroom, which is a rarity for Disney rides, so Flight of Passage scores extra points for having a relief station that doesn't require you backtracking all the way inside the park and awkwardly trying to squeeze past people to reach your family in line again once you're done. Because those judgy stares from the bystanders are the worst. Speaking of Disney World rides, if you're getting ready to go on that big dream Disney World trip and you want to ride everything you possibly can before Mickey Mouse has to say see you real soon, then go ahead and scan the QR code you see on the screen now, or head over to disneyfoodblog.com/DisneyRides, and we'll send you our free DFB guide that'll help you ride, well, everything. We got a nice little Disney ride game plan all worked out for you that you can use as a springboard for your trip. Plus, we've even got some fun ride suggestions that you might want to explore when you're outside of the parks too. Moving on to Anna and Elsa's Frozen Journey. Now I'm back in Tokyo again. This is not the one in Epcot. Who here is surprised by that? Last year, I had the incredible privilege to check out the brand new Fantasy Springs expansion for Tokyo Disney Sea, and it completely ruined me, but like in a good way, as in the bar was once again set by the Oriental Land Company and then surpassed by the Oriental Land Company. They're powerhouses. Fantasy Springs is made up of 3 new sections: Rapunzel's Forest, Peter Pan's Neverland, and Frozen Kingdom, aka the home of what's probably one of my favorite Disney rides ever. Not as good as People Mover, but close. Anna and Elsa's Frozen Journey is a slow-moving boat ride that retells the story of the first Frozen film. Now, there happen to be a bunch of rides all over the world that tell the story of the first Frozen film, but this one's head and shoulders above the rest. This ride starts with Grandpappy gathering up these young trolls to tell them the story of Anna and Elsa, which means you get to hear and experience the story too. You'll explore Anna and Elsa's childhood memories, watch Anna fall in love and want to marry a man she just met, sing along with Elsa as she treks up the North Mountain to sing that famous Disney song. Now, which one is that again? And no, this isn't a short ride. If you've ever ridden Under the Sea Journey of the Little Mermaid dark ride in Magic Kingdom before, then you've probably experienced the same thing we have. It's fun and cute and also retells Ariel's story, but in a much more abbreviated version where it almost feels like you're missing a chunk of the climax of the film. But that's not how you're going to feel on Anna and Elsa's ride over in Tokyo. This boat ride is a whopping 6.5-minute experience where no story beats are skipped. It's also filled with the animatronics that are so fluid and realistic that I couldn't help but wonder if they were actually harboring souls. These animatronics were created using computer models of each of the Frozen characters, and then Disney animators animated the movement for the ride on the computers, just like they do for the films. Disney's likened this ride to a Swiss watch in how precise it is. Every single detail in the ride is intentional, even when it comes to how your vehicle moves. For example, you can feel a literal shift in emotion when Elsa is feeling isolated and your ride vehicle is pushed backwards. But just like during Enchanted Tale of Beauty and the Beast, the most astounding moment in this Frozen attraction is when you're in that climax scene and Anna's heart goes from frozen to unfrozen. I still can't fully wrap my head around this big reveal. It is sorcery. When Anna unfreezes and her whole body relaxes in the most natural looking way, including her clothes, this is impressive. It's a technological marvel I can't get my head around, just like the Beast's transformation in the Beauty and the Beast ride. So Anna and Elsa's Frozen journey, fully immersive, emotional experience where no jaw will be left undropped by the end of the ride. Next on my list is Haunted Mansion, and I'm not just talking about one specific iteration of Haunted Mansion. I'm talking about all of them. Kind of a cheat, but you would do the same. The first iteration of the Haunted Mansion Dark Ride opened in Disneyland out in Anaheim, California in 1969, after a pretty rocky start and uncertain future. I mean, a haunted house in a family park, would it actually be scary? Would it be silly? Would it be a little mixture of both? Imagineers eventually landed on it being a mixture of both after a lot of deliberation, and their middle-of-the-road approach has stood the test of time, even after all these years. Now you can find multiple versions of Haunted Mansion all over the world. The version in Magic Kingdom opened back when the park did in 1971, and it's very similar to what you'll find over in Disneyland, with a few key changes here and there. One of the biggest differences between these two Haunted Mansions is the fact that the Disneyland version has a Nightmare Before Christmas overlay each year that extends throughout the Halloween and Christmas season. Oh, and of course the fact that in the Anaheim version, you're using a real elevator, whereas in the Magic Kingdom version, you're not. So the Haunted Mansion in Tokyo Disneyland opened back in 1983, and this mostly looks like the version you're going to find in Magic Kingdom. However, this version also has the seasonal Nightmare Before Christmas overlay, like California does. Phantom Manor in Disneyland Paris opened in 1992, and while this version does have many similarities to those that preceded it, Phantom Manor's storyline actually focuses on the ghostly bride as the main character here, instead of her being just a side character you pass by in one of the rooms like you experienced during the other three versions. Phantom Manor is also known for being the darkest version of Haunted Mansion, and instead of coming across a graveyard at the conclusion of the ride, you'll travel through the Phantom Canyon, which is like Frontierland if it were taken over by ghosts and ghoulies. But you'll find the biggest Haunted Mansion deviation over in Hong Kong Disneyland. Using ghosts and spirits as an entertainment jump-off point is very taboo in China, so instead of Haunted Mansion, Disney created Mystic Manor for this park back in 2013. And let me just say, I am jealous because Mystic Manor is epic. Instead of following deadly brides and ghoulish ballroom dancers, Mystic Manor stars Lord Henry Mystic, a respected member of the Society of Explorers and Adventurers, as well as his incredibly adorable monkey friend, Albert. Now, according to the story, Mystic Manor is a museum that houses Lord Henry's fantastic collection of artifacts and art pieces, but there is one particular place that's rumored to have something very magical within it, and when Albert the monkey gets a little too curious and activates said piece, inanimate objects are brought to life, and you're sent on a journey that, who knows, you might even like better than the original Haunted Mansions. Guess it all depends on the person. Haunted Mansion is timeless in all its versions and truly stands out amongst the hundreds of Disney rides out there as being a slightly spooky experience that riders of all ages can still be delighted and a little bit scared by. I think it's about time we add a roller coaster to this Disney list, don't you agree? So, Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind, you are up. This ride opened in Epcot back in 2022, replacing the area where the Ellen's Energy Adventure Dark Ride used to reside and RIP Universe of Energy. And there was concern at first, a Guardians ride in Epcot? How is that even gonna work? But when the ride opened as the first ever Otherworld Pavilion for Epcot called the Wonders of Xandar Pavilion, guests for the most part accepted this MCU inclusion, especially since the ride is situated in the World Discovery area anyways, amongst all the other intergalactic attractions nearby like Mission Space and Space 220. Cosmic Rewind is a first-of-its-kind coaster. Not only is it one of the longest indoor coasters in the world, like the show building is giant, you could fit 4 spaceship Earths inside of it, but it's also the first backwards launch coaster for Disney. I admit I was nervous about the whole backwards launch thing before I went on it because it sounds like whiplash just waiting thing to happen, but when I tell you that launch is super smooth along with the rest of this ride through, I mean it. The most intense part about the family-friendly Omnimover coaster is the fact that your ride vehicle has the ability to spin 360 degrees, but even then, you're not spinning around in that thing like you're riding Mad Tea Party with your older cousin who wants to go as hard on the spins as possible. The spinning on this ride is more so you can see everything going on around you. But that doesn't mean those who are sensitive to motion sickness aren't going to feel the motion sickness when your ride vehicle starts off facing backwards and then twists to face you in every direction all ride through long, and then you're actually spinning in your ride vehicle and you're turning in the coaster as well. Things get a little mixed up maybe in your tummy. They did in mine. That being said, if you can take your non-drowsy Dramamine before this one, I'd recommend at least trying it out once if you're able to, because this is just such a fun coaster. And the fun starts right when you enter into the queue, because first you'll get to explore the Xandar Gallery, where the Xandarians teach Terrans, aka Earth Dwellers, about their world, their people, and their advanced technologies. And then after a little pre-show, before the pre-show, you'll be led into what is known as a phase chamber. Now, the phase chamber is one of the coolest Disney pre-shows just because it's one big magic trick. You start off in a tiny room, and then you're transported into a much bigger room without you having to move an inch. Disney Imagineers, amazing. Now, what fans really love about this Guardians themed attraction, in addition to the absolutely hilarious characters, which is my favorite part of Guardians of the Galaxy, is the randomized music. You never know what song you're gonna hear when you're on this ride, but there are 6 different possibilities, and they're all hits on Star-Lord's mixtape, so it's a win-win no matter what. Cosmic Rewind is a blast in more than one way, but beyond that, Disney Imagineers have managed to create a ride that's thrilling and accessible to those who maybe aren't too keen on high-speed coaster experiences, or even don't really understand the MCU or the Guardians of the Galaxy, because they're very accessible characters, they're relatable and fun characters, so you're gonna have a good time whether you know the storyline or not. Here's another classic Disney attraction that you're going to find in not just the domestic parks, but the international ones too. Pirates of the Caribbean's getting the Haunted Mansion treatment here. POC was the last ride that Walt Disney himself had a direct part in creating. After Walt's passing in December 1966, the Pirates of the Caribbean boat ride opened in Disneyland just a few months later in March 1967. When Magic Kingdom opened in 1971, Pirates of the Caribbean was purposefully left out, since the company executives worried that Florida residents wouldn't really care very much about a Pirates themed attraction since they were so close to the Caribbean anyway, and pirates are a big part of the state's lore. But after an outcry from Southern guests about the lack of pirates in Magic Kingdom, Disney quickly fixed their mistake by adding a Pirates Dark ride very similar to the one you'll find in Disneyland inside Magic Kingdom's Adventureland Pavilion. But in my opinion, it's not quite similar enough, because you're going to miss that huge and incredible traveling through those giant caverns that you have in Disneyland. You do not get that part in Disney World, and I think it's drastically worse in Disney World because the Disneyland version is so cool. But this is for another video, right? Right. Okay. Now, as Disney began to add overseas parks to its roster, Pirates of the Caribbean went with them. For the most part, each Pirates iteration that you can find overseas is a nearly identical version to what you're going to find in domestic parks. Then there's Shanghai Disneyland, which totally took the Pirates of the Caribbean concept and modernized it in a way that we're still speechless over it. Pirates of the Caribbean Battle for the Sunken Treasure opened in Shanghai in June 2016. Battle for the Sunken Treasure blends screen technology with Disney's impressive animatronics and immersive sets to give us an entirely new perspective of a classic dark ride. And that Davy Jones animatronic playing the organ literally chills. You do not want to mess with that guy. Pirates of the Caribbean gets a lot of love from not just Disney fans, but Disney itself. We've seen improvements and additional animatronics added to this dark ride over the years, but even the sets and characters that have stuck around since the beginning are still iconic across generations. Okay, now this next one is pretty far down our list for how popular it is, but yeah, you can argue with me in the comments. So, long ago in a galaxy far, far away. Okay, this is all a lie. Rise of the Resistance isn't all that far away. You just got to turn into Disney's Hollywood Studios or Disneyland to find it. And on top of that, this state-of-the-art ride came onto the scene not too long ago. Opening first at Hollywood Studios in December 2019, and then opening in Disneyland in January 2020. But there is one universal truth about this attraction. It is out of this world. Rise of the Resistance does it all. It's immersive, it's trackless, it's got some sudden thrilling moments that make your stomach drop a little bit. bit. Not a lot, just a little. It's got impressive animatronics, and a good portion of this ride also takes place before you step inside your transport ship. The back-to-back pre-shows are a big part of this experience. In Room 1, you're going to meet Rey and BB-8 as they welcome you to the cause against the First Order. Then you'll board a transport ship piloted by Lieutenant Bek, which feels like a ride in and of itself, since the window of this ship will show you flying over to your next destination. Spoiler alert approaching, just in case you haven't ridden this one yet, you want to experience it fresh. Okay, suddenly your ship is going to be hijacked by First Order crew members, and you'll be led to your holding cells, which means walking past that iconic room of stormtroopers that, yes, you can stop and take a picture of if you'd like, but don't hang around too long because those First Order cast members are going to move you right along. Rise of the Resistance is groundbreaking in so many ways, and it truly illustrates how Disney doesn't have to settle on just one type of ride style. They can mesh a dark ride, a thrill ride, and an immersive walkthrough experience into one mega attraction and still pull it off. So once again, Disney shows off its dark side with a ride that's centered around ghoulish tragedy, much like Haunted Mansion, but this time, instead of the ghosts materializing inside a slow-moving dark ride, they're wreaking havoc in a hotel-themed drop tower. Tower of Terror first materialized in Disney's Hollywood Studios back in 1994. Only back then, the park was called MGM Studios, but that's a whole other topic for another day. Tower of Terror was built back in a time when Disney was trying to add some more thrills and older kid attractions to their theme park mix. And while some of those older kid attractions didn't survive, like Extraterrestrial Alien Encounter and Magic Kingdom, for instance, Tower of Terror definitely did. There's just something about traveling into the fifth dimension, back in time and through the Twilight Zone that really gets people all amped up and grateful that they survived a randomized 13-story drop. Yep, randomized is the key word here. In celebration of the attraction's 10th anniversary back in 2004, randomized patterns of drops and lifts were added to this Hollywood Studios attraction, and ever since, the ride vehicles now drop or rise in various distances at various intervals for up to 5 to 8 drops per ride. Tower of Terror eventually started popping up in international Disney parks too, of course, because when Disney has a hit, they distribute it everywhere, right? The Tower of Terror at Walt Disney Studios Park over in Paris opened in 2007, and while it used to be a pretty watered down version compared to the one in Hollywood Studios, recently it has added 3 new randomized stories to its mix, so you never know which bout of horrors you're going to experience when you ride. Will it be the one with a little ghost girl or the one with a creature who's after your soul? Maybe it's the psychedelic one that launches you in another dimension. Yes, Disney definitely takes care of our therapists' job security. The Tokyo Disney Sea version of this ride opened back in 2006, but instead of being based around the Twilight Zone, it's based around the original story of the disappearance of Harrison Hightower, who is one of the members of Disney's fictitious club, the Society of Explorers and Adventurers, and also happens to be Joe Rohde. Originally, this ride was pretty tame compared to Hollywood Studios' version, but back in 2024, Tokyo Disney decided to switch things up a little bit and put the fate of Tower of Terror into the guests' hands. From January 9th to February 4th, Tower of Terror featured a version of the ride called Tower of Terror Level 13, which included a lot more drops and much scarier effects. Then, from February 5th to March 6th, a second version of the ride took over called Tower of Terror Shadow of Tsuriki. Now, this overlay expanded the backstory of the tower, going more in depth with the horror behind the Tsuriki Otundu curse. After both rides were featured, Tokyo Disney had the guests vote on their favorite version, and the winners stuck around till April 7th. In 2025, Tower of Terror Level 13 returned as a temporary overlay lasting from January 14th to April 6th, and we're going to see what happens next. Who knows? Looks like they're kind of doing a lot of fun stuff with Tower of Terror. Once upon a time, you could also find a Tower of Terror at Disney California Adventure over in Disneyland Resort, but at the start of 2017, DCA closed Tower of Terror and rethemed it to Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout. And while some people mourned the loss of Tower of Terror representation on the West Coast, and to be fair, people still do, I'm gonna be straight with y'all, I loved this change. I always felt like the Tower of Terror in DCA was inferior to the version that existed in Hollywood Studios anyways, especially when you consider that the Tower of Terror on the East Coast is also the only Tower of Terror with the ability to leave its first elevator shaft, go into a horizontal track through a Twilight Zone segment, and then return to a second vertical elevator shaft that'll actually be where you're dropped over and over again at the climax of the ride. So when Mission Breakout took over the Tower of Terror in DCA, along with all its, Easter eggs, figments in there, lots of cool stuff, it felt like we got to really see Imagineering at its finest. How cool is it that Disney can take a ride that used to fill you with this sense sense of excitement but also dread and transform it into a ride that fills you with excitement and energy. More randomized 80s songs, bring it on. Plus, with the Guardians re-theme, we were also introduced to the Halloween overlay for Mission Breakout called Guardians of the Galaxy Monsters After Dark, which shows up every Halloween season to bring a little bit of that dread back to the West Coast for those who are missing it. This version, really scary. In summary, Tower of Terror intrigues me just as much as it terrifies me, and while the thrills are mighty, it's still a drop tower that many brave kiddos out there could fall in love with alongside with their parents. Get it? Fall in love with? Okay. I get it. It's a Small World is certainly not going to be everyone's favorite ride. The dolls can be unsettling and the music is bound to get stuck in your head for the rest of the day. But listen, there is no denying the fact that this colorful cruise known around the world is iconic for guests of all ages and impactful to the Disney company as a whole. Way back when, Walt Disney himself originally designed It's a Small World for the Pepsi-Cola Company to benefit UNICEF at the 1964-1965 New York World's Fair. When the fair closed, the attraction made its way over to Disneyland, where it became so popular with guests that Magic Kingdom added its own Small World as an opening day attraction. And the international Disney parks have their own similar versions of It's a Small World too. This little dark ride made its debut in Tokyo in 1983, Disneyland Paris in 92, and Hong Kong Disneyland in 2008. And then 2009 rolled around, which is when little Disney-specific characters started popping up over at Disneyland's It's a Small World out in California. These new dolls captured the likeness of some of our favorite animated friends, placing them in the ride show scenes that made sense to their respective stories. For example, Peter Pan and Tink hang out in the UK section. Mulan and Mushu can be found in China. Lilo and Stitch are in Hawaii. You get the picture. But Tokyo Disneyland Small World ride really threw us for a loop recently by announcing that Marvel would be taking over their version of It's a Small World by winter of 2025. But hold on, Disney purists, it's okay. It's just going to be a fun temporary overlay. That's all. So what's the story behind this Marvel takeover? Well, in It's a Small World with Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy and his friends over from Marvel Studios films will be visiting Earth for vacation. This will mark the first ever appearance of Marvel characters in an attraction at Tokyo Disney Resort. So this is a historic crossover in the making. During Groot's visit to Earth, he'll encounter his friends in various locations around the globe to experience their regional cultures and music. All of this to say, It's a Small World has found a way to relay its message of peace and love and stay relevant in doing so even after all this time. The legendary Imagineer Mary Blair's design work featured throughout the sets, the dolls, and even the outward appearances of each unique Small World building is timeless and continues to be eye candy for millions of guests each year. Now, we've made it to our bonus honorable mentions section of this video. Before we talk about the 10th and final ride on today's list, how about we highlight some honorable mentions that didn't quite make the rank, but deserve a shout out regardless. First, of course, People Mover in Magic Kingdom. Fellow members of the unofficial People Mover fan club, rejoice, for the People Mover is still getting the recognition it deserves. Yeah, call me biased, I can't help it. As the self-appointed president of the unofficial People Mover fan club, it is my responsibility to make sure no People Mover reference gets left behind. The People Mover officially debuted at Disneyland in 1967 before it debuted in Magic Kingdom in 75. While Walt had a lot bigger dreams for the People Mover before his passing, the main purpose turned into showcasing an elevated view of Tomorrowland. And you know what? It's an absolute vibe, as the kids would say. In the 1990s, Disneyland attempted to thrillify their version of the People Mover, but these changes were pretty poorly executed, leading to major damage done to the People Mover's infrastructure. So the ride was shut down in Disneyland in 1995, but still remains kicking and thriving in Magic Kingdom to this very day, of course. And how about the utter insanity of Journey to the Center of the Earth in Tokyo Disney Sea? Does this ride confuse and terrify me? Yes, but am I also totally impressed by it? 1000%. At the start of this ride, you load into a steampunk subterranean vehicle to get ready to check out this strange and bizarre world that Captain Nemo, the genius, not the fish, has unearthed. And while you're exploring these cavern realms, suddenly you'll come face to face with that giant lava monster who's just trying to protect her egg babies. But you're an invader in her home, so really you're the bad guy here, not her. Don't let Captain Nemo convince you otherwise. Journey to the Center of the Earth is gorgeous and unsettling and great for those who love experiencing the darker side of Disney Imagineering. It's just tricky when you're trying to piece together what's really going on during this ride beyond Mama Lava Monster. And then the ride's suddenly over and you're still going to be left wondering, wondering what on earth you just witnessed, but you're also gonna love it. Now, if I didn't thank the Phoenicians before the end of this video, I feel like I would have been cursed by the Epcot gods, like maybe I would have suddenly forgotten my ABCs. While Epcot was still in its planning stages, Walt Disney planned on having the bulk of the Spaceship Earth attraction housed in a show building behind the park's icon, with only the climax happening within the structure. However, in the end, Disney decided to have the entire ride housed within the sphere, using a twisting Omnimover ride system that would wind up and down a circular ramp. While Spaceship Earth saw a lot of significant changes during those early years, today the ride showcases the evolution of communication through the use of intricate sets and dozens upon dozens of animatronics. Back in 2019, during the D23 Fan Expo, Disney announced that Spaceship Earth would receive a major overhaul, switching the dark ride premise from the evolution of communication to the evolution of storytelling. But the 2020 closures put those renovation plans on an indefinite hiatus. And finally, it is time for us to talk about the ever iconic Tomorrowland roller coaster, Space Mountain. When Space Mountain first opened in Magic Kingdom in 1975, it was one of the first ever indoor roller coasters in the world. And even though coaster speeds only ever reached 28 miles per hour, the near complete darkness, as well as all the sudden turns and drops all along the track, gave off the illusion that Space Mountain was twice as fast as it actually was. The second Space Mountain was opened in Disneyland out in Anaheim by 1977. Now, this Disneyland version is actually my preferred version of the two domestic Space Mountains. Not only can you have your buddies sit with you on this one versus having to ride single file like you do in Magic Kingdom, but after some major track renovations that were made to Disneyland Space Mountain back in 2005, this coaster became a way smoother and all-around more enjoyable experience than the OG Space Mountain on the East Coast. Not to mention, around Disneyland's Season of the Force, which happens early spring, like right now, Space Mountain takes on a limited time Star Wars overlay called Hyperspace Mountain, where you're going to find yourself in the middle of an intergalactic showdown between the Resistance and the First Order. This re-theme includes a new Star Wars soundtrack and familiar Star Wars theming projected throughout the ride, and it's my favorite overlay. But Space Mountain doesn't stop there. Back in the day, Disneyland also used to have this terrifying temporary overlay for Space Mountain called Ghost Galaxy, which would pop up during the Halloween season. It was super scary, like truly. It had skeleton space ghosts popping out at you during the ride and everything. Now, we haven't seen this version on the ride return for a while, so as of now, we're going to bury that past Disneyland trauma right alongside our extraterrestrial alien encounter trauma from Magic Kingdom. Hong Kong Disney also has a version of Space Mountain, albeit a much smaller version, that opened back in 2005. And before that, a version of Space also opened out in Tokyo Disneyland in 1983. Per the release of this video, the Space Mountain out in Tokyo is officially closed as the park transforms this iconic sci-fi coaster into a completely renovated experience that's slated to open sometime in 2027. And if you learned anything from today's video, Tokyo does not pull punches when it comes to enhanced ride experience, so I am stoked to see what this becomes when all is said and done. Shockingly enough, the most unique version of Space Mountain actually exists out in Disneyland Paris. Once upon a time, the Paris version of this coaster was actually very Victorian and steampunk heavy, inspired by the 1865 novel by Jules Verne called From the Earth to the Moon. But in order to garner a little more popularity for the attraction, the Space Mountain out in Paris switched over to a classic space overlay around 2005, and in 2017 it got a more permanent Star Wars re-theme, featuring a revamped queue and props themed to the film franchise. Yet the coaster track remained the same. Instead of a family-friendly coaster that never gets above 30 miles per hour, the version out in Paris features an uphill catapult that launches riders from 0 to 44 miles per hour in 1.8 seconds with 3 inversions. Very different from the Space Mountains we have back home. Space was the trailblazer for Disney's indoor coasters. Without it, there'd be no Cosmic Rewind or Rock and Roller Coaster in Hollywood Studios, no Tron Light Cycle Run in Magic Kingdom. And the fact that Space Mountain is still going strong today proves that people still love this classic coaster, sharp turns and all. All right, friends, I am turning it over to you now. Which Disney ride do you think should have been added to this list, even as an honorable mention? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to pick up our free Ride Everything guide over at disneyfoodblog.com/DisneyRides right now. Thanks for listening, everyone, and thanks for watching. As always, this is AJ for Disney Food Blog, and we'll see you real soon.